Success doesn't come to you, you must go to it. So to go to it, you must know what it is.
G'day, y'all. This is episode number 6 of The Matt Sweeny Show. I talk with President Nido Qubein about his leadership of High Point University. Let's go. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Glad to be with you.
So I'm excited to talk to you for a couple of reasons. One, you've got an incredible story about coming here with $50 in your pocket and turning around one of the major American universities. Two, we're both entrepreneurs who find ourselves in an academic environment, which is interesting. And third, I'm launching a new program at Tusculum University. I'm looking to learn from your leadership success, how I can be successful with this program. So you've been, and the approach I'm going to take to this discussion is speaking the truth in love. So you've been president of High Point for 20 going on 21 years, and it's been quite the turnaround. So let's do a little snapshot of then versus now. So what were the enrollment numbers, the endowment numbers, and any metrics that you view as important that you like to think about?
I was in business 30 plus years, and I was the incoming chairman of the board at High Point University. High Point University was not doing well. We had 370 students in our freshman class, losing about 20% a year. And my buddies on the board convinced me to come. I did not really want to be president of the school. I was doing just fine. And I promised to come for 2 years and turn things around. And fell in love with the mission, the vision, what we're trying to do, and the impact we can create in the lives of students. So here I am 20 years later. Now, we had $120 million in deferred maintenance. It's a very important fact. We were 91 acres landlocked. We were an urban campus. We had 1,400 students, budget of $28 million, and endowment of $40 million. We had 3 academic schools, and no reserves, anything like that. So anyway, today, by contrast, we have 14 academic schools, including law and dental and pharmacy and health sciences and nursing and engineering, so on. So you get an idea. These are very complicated schools to start. We have 6,400 students. We have an annual budget of $500 million. We went from 91 acres to almost 600 acres. We built 108 buildings. And our freshman class this year will be 1,700 first-year freshmen, plus 100 or so transfers and readmits. We've come a long way. We're very successful. We built all of our buildings with cash, and we have taken the endowment from $40 million to roughly $240 million, but we have not focused on the endowment. I'm focused more on building the product that we could position in the marketplace. And the endowment is coming, and the growth just happenstance. We did not really focus on it. I focused on money going towards building buildings and making good things happen. Along the way, we attracted some major people. Like tonight, for example, I interviewed the founder of Netflix, who's with us on an in-residence arrangement. We also have the founder of Apple Computer and the chairs of the board of AT&T and Domino's and all these people. These are connections that I have, and we bring them to High Point to teach our students and to create life skills. So I didn't realize that we have done something dramatic. We fixed all the deferred maintenance and all that. We don't have deferred maintenance today. Our campus is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's pretty spectacular. And today we have about 22,000 applications for the freshman class, another 10,000 or so for graduate programs. And I think what we have done at High Point is we became a distinctive university, even though some people in the academy and others may not have trusted that at the beginning and may have, in fact, criticized that. Today, they're realizing that, well, maybe we do know something and maybe it's working just fine for us.
Well, congratulations. So let me ask you about High Point in the market today. If there's a student, thinking they're graduating high school, they're thinking about going to college, what is High Point's key point of distinction today? Why should a student go to High Point?
Oh, there are many reasons. Number one, values, God, family, country. We own the lane in the marketplace. We have enormous clarity about who we are, what we stand for, God, family, country. Second, we're the premier life skills university. We have an ecosystem that is vertical in nature, that is embodied in both the academic sector here as well as the student life sector here, career sector, and so on. Number three, outcomes. 99% of our students graduate within 6 months of graduation, get a job, start a business, or go to graduate school of their choice. And number four is responsiveness. We are highly responsive with success coaches and concierge service and 24/7 answering service to parents and students and so on. So it's a different model. It's a very expensive model to execute on. But it is when you're not in New Orleans or Miami or Nashville or Austin or Dallas, you have a tough time marketing an institution because it's a very competitive terrain. It didn't used to be like this, but with less students graduating from high school and with more public institutions entering the zone of private institutions, people like Georgia and Alabama and University of South Carolina, they're all promoting in the same geographic areas we promote for students. So then you have to really figure out who you are and what you can do to survive and thrive, which is exactly what we've done here. And as I said, it's worked magically well. So far, so good.
So let's talk about God, family, country. High Point was created by and I think is affiliated with the United Methodist Church. How would you describe your faith and does your faith play a role in your leadership?
Well, I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. My faith is everything to me. I believe that when you have faith and when you have courage, you have faithful courage. It drives who you are, what you do, and why you do it. I believe God has a plan for my life, and by the grace of God and the help of others, I've been able to do anything in life. So High Point University is a Christian school that is welcoming of everybody, right? So we're an inclusive university. We have Christians, we have Jewish students, we have Muslim students. I'm sure we have students with no religion. But we as an institution stand on these foundational principles. And there's something for everybody here, right? So there are Republicans who have their club, there are Democrats who have their club, there are Catholics who have their mass, there are Protestants who have their Christian service in the chapel, and so on. And I think inclusivity is a wonderful thing because it is a microcosm of the world. But we as an institution, we're pretty clear on who we are. We pray before our meetings, we pray before our meals, we give God the glory, we have scriptural quotations across campus, and so on.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you. And so you write the highest order of leadership is to tell the truth. How do you think about free speech on a university campus? And when I talk about free speech, I also think of this as a Christian value, thinking back to Daniel in the lion's den.
Well, the term free speech has many meanings to a lot of people. For me, free speech means not to be subjugated to some military form of government, if you say something or criticize something. For the academy, free speech quite often means freedom of academic freedom, which is speak your piece in the classroom. Of course, as long as it is somehow connected to the subject matter. If you're teaching mathematics, you shouldn't be discussing Middle East politics. But if you're teaching history or political science, even sociology or anthropology, you might find that to be appropriate. So I think that freedom of any kind has to be married to responsibility. So just because you have free speech doesn't mean you go around screaming at people or screaming fire in a cinema. You get arrested for that. And on a college campus, I think professors have to be given some degree of freedom within the mores and folkways of the culture of that institution. So our institution has it's not necessarily defined on posters, but it is in the air. People get it that we are, that we abide by and follow certain behavioral patterns. And in that realm, I think free speech is a healthy thing. It's not a bad thing at all. I support it. I'm not very comfortable with what is happening in government today, with universities being told if you don't do this, if you do this, if a student is part of a protest, assuming it's a peaceful protest. Now, if you start breaking windows and going in someone's office and so on, that's disruptive behavior that ought to be punished. I don't think that violates the responsibility part. But just because someone protests a certain subject, you shouldn't have to, send them back to the country they came from, because after all, we do live in America, and the beauty thing about America is that we're not in some militant government that so many parts of the world, live within. So that's sort of my take on free speech.
Okay, well, thanks for talking that through. So I want to talk about and learn about the transformation of High Point. Some things that I've sort of taken away from your journey is that you started out with a vision to be distinctive. You decided that High Point would be extraordinary. You raised money fast. You removed friction from existing processes and added a wow factor, which helped to
Mhm.
boost enrollment. You
Mhm.
you set a mission-driven culture which really focused on primarily serving the student. And then you created an entrepreneurial culture within the university. And so, I think of a university as a business. And I know it's a nonprofit, but it's still got to make money, it's still got to pay bills. And so, how do you actually think about the business model of a university? What are the key levers that you can pull as a leader to try to drive success?
Yeah. Um, well, the university is not a business. It is a nonprofit enterprise that must apply and abide by certain business principles. So, for example, simple business principle, P&L. Your receipts and your expenses ought to be equal, or your receipts ought to be higher than your expenses, because you have expenses that are not operational, like fixing roofs and paving streets. So, High Point, for example, is not a business in the sense that we don't have to distribute dividends, to any stakeholders. On the other hand, we try to generate a higher amount in our revenue line than our expense line, because we have to build these buildings, add these programs, pay people more, beautify the campus, build the library, et cetera, et cetera. And so the business principles that are noble to me are things like efficiency and productivity. Having classes with 6 students in them for a freshman or sophomore class is crazy. It lacks the scale necessary to be logically pragmatic, So we pay attention to those kinds of things. We pay attention to the efficiency of the buildings. Using a building just 4 or 5 hours a day for classes is crazy. So we have classes from 7:45 in the morning to 7:45 in the evening. And there are different people who like to take classes different hours. And the different professors who like to teach at different hours. So all of these kind of elements enter the zone of sound business principles that you shouldn't make a decision about something that you know is not going to be prudent or practical, or it could be injurious if you don't pay attention to it. So it is an enterprise for sure. It's an enterprise because you have a product called education and you have a customer called a student and a family, and you're trying to marry the two. And you're trying to charge the student, the family, a certain fee to enter your zone and benefit from that which you offer. To that extent, yeah, it's a product that you sell. There's no question about that. And you have to promote the product and position the product, and you have to deliver it at a high degree of excellence and service.
Okay, so coming from an entrepreneurial background, there are a few cultural differences that I've noticed between, a startup company and a university. One
Mm,
is in business, it's always, in my experience, about success-based compensation. So one thing that I did running a startup is I gave almost every full-time employee stock options in the company, which
right.
helped drive a sense of ownership. And where possible, especially with sales, was to try to jobs that involve sales was to try to structure success-based compensation so that
Right.
those who were the best at what they did were
Yes.
rewarded for doing more.
Yes.
And coming into a university environment, one of the things that I notice sort of is you may have one person who's an absolute rock star, but they're not necessarily earning more than their colleagues. So how do you think about success-based compensation within a university? At like in terms of the board compensating the president, but are you also able to have that flow down to the people who are reporting to you?
Yeah. Well, you touch on a very important point because the most obvious part of this is your sales force, which we call admissions counselors. We are precluded from rewarding behavior or performance based on some statistical, analytics. So, for example, if one admissions counselor exceeds their goals in a certain territory, you can't say to them, "Well, you get a commission of X because you exceeded that." That's against the law, by the way,
Is
or
that
at
a
least
Title IV requirement or something
yeah,
like
something
that?
like that, or against the code of ethics of the whatever it's called. I think it's called NACAC, National Association of College Counselors or Advisors. Um, the same thing with fundraising, right? However, you do have the capacity to offer bonuses to people based on performance. The challenge there is, are you being equitable? Are you are you being fair? And can you defend that? And in a very litigious society, most people want to avoid those kinds of decisions. So what we do here is we do give bonuses. For example, we issued a $32 million bonus plan. It's payout over 5 years. So if you work here, we were formed in 1924, found in 1924. So this was our centennial this past year, actually this year, 24, 25. And so in August, we announced that we want to honor the centennial by offering a bonus. The bonus will be $1,924, payable in August, the beginning of the year, for those employed at that time. And then again in November, week before Thanksgiving, to help with expenses of the holidays. So that's a $3,800 plus bonus. And the truth is, we give it to everybody. And to that extent, that's slightly unfair. And your attempt to be fair is unfair because you're rewarding the superior performer equal to the satisfactory performer. Assuming if they're not satisfactory, you don't keep them in your employ. And that's a struggle. For someone with an entrepreneurial mindset, there's definitely a struggle. And one has to figure it out. Now, one way I do it, of course, is I can promote people manager, director, senior director, assistant vice president, senior vice president, etc. And with those promotions come higher pay scales. So that's one way you deal with that issue. The other thing that we do at High Point is that we give every employee here $600 a year on their passport, on their official card, so they can eat free on campus, or they can go to one of 100 plus merchants in town. Think of a tire dealer and a drugstore and a restaurant, and they can use that card like a debit card. We also give our employees gifts in August, sweatshirts, hats, travel bags. We have a place at the beach that we send our faculty to with their family free. They can go and stay there free. We have a faculty club with food, free food all day, every day, in the faculty club. We have kiosks across campus that have drinks and snacks from 7 in the morning to 11 every day. We do a multitude of things like that, and we don't charge parents for every one of those things. We charge one fee, which is all inclusive. So nobody could ever accuse us of doing something so we can make a buck.
So,
And
so
that
what,
creates an atmospheric of goodness and generosity and kindness, and people like it.
so what I'm hearing you say is you be as success-based and merit-based as the law allows you to be. Um, and is that also how you think about it at the board level? I'm sure that boards hire, you're one of the most successful university presidents, and so I'm sure that's success-based as well in terms of how the board compensates you, correct?
Yeah, that's a different ball game, because what a board does, and I think it's typical of most universities anyway. I think what a board does, at least in our case, they hire a compensation consulting company. They do comparative scales, size, fundraising, the whole host of traits they look at and performance metrics they look at. And then they decide within the realm of this advisory group, they decide this is the range of pay that this president can make. In my case, I came from business, so our compensation committee looks at me in if I were running a business of this size versus running a university, and they were successful in coming up with some kind of a balance between the two. Now, when I was in business, I made multiples of what I make at High Point, and I have had many, many offers since I've come to High Point to be a CEO of some pretty major corporations like 10 billion, 12 billion in sales. And you can make a ton of money. But at some point in one's life, one has to acknowledge the difference between, working for money and working for a purpose. And while I feel fairly compensated at High Point, it doesn't matter that in business I could do better. That doesn't matter. Nobody's putting chains around me and making me stay here. And so I'm grateful for that. But I do think that universities have to more and more think along the lines of business principles. And one reason that so many colleges are not successful and are struggling and have very high discount rate, which is a form of struggle, by the way, is because they don't, it's not because they are negligent or callous in any way. It's just that they're truly ignorant of the facts that there is a better way of doing this, or they are reticent to enter a zone that may be contrary to what they've always done.
So another cultural difference between the business world and universities that I've encountered, and I'll just briefly mention a little bit about my background so that you have the context here.
Mhm.
Um, my first business was selling entrepreneurial leadership materials to aspiring entrepreneurs in Australia,
Mhm.
and we won a
Mhm.
nationwide competition. And
Mhm.
then I started a drone delivery company, flying robots that deliver packages. And we got accepted into Y Combinator in Silicon Valley. We had a pitch day. We raised about $5 million at that pitch day, kept raising, ultimately raised about a $16 million Series A. And we went out and I negotiated a partnership with a university. And what we wanted, yeah, so we had a drone with four rotors, and we wanted an algorithm that if one rotor failed, we wanted that drone to still be able to fly with three rotors. So our
Mhm.
success criteria was that the drone can still fly. And so we funded a research project with a university who set about to build the algorithm. And their success criteria was something to the effect of that they got to publish some papers. And so at the end of this project, the university thought they were successful because they got, and this is not Tusculum, it's a different university. The
Right.
university felt they were successful because they managed to publish papers, and we were just like, does the algorithm work? They were like,
Yeah.
no. And so, how do you think about best practices in terms of connecting the business community with your institution?
So it's like town gown.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I know that I've noticed that you have a lot of like really prominent business speakers come in and do commencement. And I just
Hmm.
wonder if, based on your experience, there's anything that you've seen that does a really good job of connecting the business community with the academic community and creating mutually beneficial outcomes.
Well, I mean, I think the answer to that question varies from institution to institution, from locality to locality. For us here, we're more thoughtful about um, just good community relations. We're not so much involved in the business relationships. We obviously have internships and career services, and we want our students to get jobs, get internships. To that extent, maybe we have some, a collection of companies we work with. But generally speaking, we're more thoughtful about giving more than receiving. We invest a lot of money in our city. I chaired the downtown renovation project, and the university contributed $20 million towards that. We brought in a baseball team, helped build the baseball stadium, and with local government money as well involved. So we do lots of things like that. Our students are all engaged in the life of the community as volunteers, roughly 1 million hours a year. They raise a lot of money for nonprofits. To that extent, we're very involved. We have a director of community relations. We don't really. By the way, we have 6,400 students. We have 2,300 employees. So that should set in your mind a standard of excellence in service. We're a high touch organization. And then we inspect everything we expect. I have someone who literally sort of inspector general is just walking around looking for areas to improve, looking for behavioral patterns to improve, like like catching people on the tour and see if they're doing it right or wrong, without anyone knowing about that. Of course, all done very, very thoughtfully, very respectfully. And the purpose always is to be better tomorrow than we were yesterday. So that's our involvement with the community. Now, in a big city where you have large corporations, I can see how you would be more intensely interested on inventions and, making business deals with those companies. We don't particularly have that.
Got it. So I'm now the director of the Freedom Center at Tusculum University. Tusculum is about the size of High Point when you became president.
Okay.
Um, and so the program that
You
I'm
mean you
launch
mean you mean the enrollment size or the acreage size?
all of the above, I think. Um,
Okay.
that I think, High Point in 2005 is about the size across all the key metrics as Tusculum today.
Okay.
Um, so I've come up with this new program that does two things. One is it encourages students to start a real company while they're at college,
Okay.
provides them entrepreneurial mentorship, a pitch day, the opportunity to get in front of investors. That's
Hmm.
part one. Part two is it takes a great books approach. So it takes the great books of Western civilization, the great writers from Aristotle through to Adam Smith and the
Yeah.
Bible. And so it combines entrepreneurship with with the history of Western thought. And so we're really excited because, I had some modest fundraising goals and enrollment goals, and I've exceeded all of them. And the program launches in the fall. And so
Hmm.
what I wanted to ask you is, you've launched a lot of successful academic programs. Do you have like, is there anything that you can think of that's worked especially well, or any general advice you have for me about how to take a program that has a lot of potential and really make that a success?
Well, I think, yeah, I do. I think number one, you have to have a clear vision about what the program is. Well, what exactly is it? Can you describe it in 10, 12 words? Number two, you have to have a solid strategy. Where are you today? Where do you want to go? How are you going to get there? Do you have a real plan of how to get there? Number three, you have to commit yourself to practical systems, no pie in the sky, no Pollyanna thinking. Number four, you have to execute consistently even when hiccups are in the way and difficulty emerges. That's the way I know how to make a program successful. Now, of course, it goes without saying, does the program have merit? Is there market demand for it? Are you resourced to pull it off? Do people appreciate it? Do you have enough participants? Is there enough universe you can plug into? Obviously, all of those are normal questions that one asks, but universally, we understand that the idea has to be of merit, otherwise, it's silly. Coming up with something that you think is a great idea, but nobody else thinks is a great idea, is dumb. And so that is not to say that there's some great inventors in the world who everybody thought they were dumb and it turned out to be that's pretty smart. So I'm not suggesting that. I'm more suggesting that you got to be practical about what you do to make an idea work. Also, of course, you have to make sure you're communicating the idea with others in terminology they can understand and appreciate. And you have to demonstrate that the results of this idea, the outcomes, merit continued interest and investment, and they are in fact consistent with the values and goals of the organization. All of these general factors to make anything work. Maybe faculty have to be involved. Maybe board of trustees has to be involved. I don't know, depending on the idea. But here we try to be centralized, not decentralized. In other words, while we have great respect for our faculty and staff, there are certain things that are just done at the president's level, at the provost level, or the business office level, because we're a fast-moving organization here, and the risk is high, and you have to make sure that people making those decisions are equipped to make the right decisions and are gifted enough to understand the ins and outs of making such a decision. And in other words, understand the risk inherent in doing it and learning how to avoid that risk. So we are much more centralized in our decision making than perhaps a large institution where faculty groups or others make the decisions, at their locations in a decentralized form.
You're also a best, and by the way, that was super helpful, so thank you. You're also a best-selling author, in addition to being a university president. And
Hmm.
I know there are a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, including, I will think, many of the students in our entrepreneurial program
Yeah.
who aspire to be authors. What's the what advice would you have in terms of, like, how does someone think about cracking the book publishing industry?
Mm.
What's your, it's almost like an elevator pitch. Like, if you could give a key piece of advice to someone who wants to be a successful author who knows nothing about the industry, what would it be?
Well, it depends. If that author has a market, an existing market that he or she can control. For example, my first books were published in 1983. They were published by a division of Simon and Schuster. At that point, the purpose of publishing my books was to position me in the marketplace, to make sure that those people who read my books engage me to speak and consult with their companies, because that was the world in which I was trying to nurture my future. Um, If the person is publishing a book, for example, for the purpose of free distribution, they just want to give it to everybody to promote what they're doing, then then maybe they should print it themselves so they can mail it out and so on. I went all the way from being with national publishers when I came to Hypo, and I gave Hypo the rights to my books, and we stopped publishing the books ourselves because we're not interested in selling them. We're interested in using them as promotional content to attract students and to attract families. So our promotional systems here with students in high school and their families is not just to send brochures and emails, but quite often it's to send a book. The book that you like, which I wrote about High Point University, and um, I wrote it because everybody thought that I was just a genius, doing what I did. And I want him to understand yes, that book. I want him to understand that there is a journey that I traveled. And sometimes it wasn't very sweet, and sometimes I had to fight my way through it. And I left out some of the ugly stuff. There was even uglier stuff that I put in the book. But I think the book reflects pretty well what it takes. It takes innovation on the one hand, it takes risk taking on the other, it takes faithful courage on the other, it takes sometimes fighting for what you believe in, and so on and so forth. For all these reasons, I had to sort of look at things differently than other people do. So we publish a lot of our own books. Now, to publish a book and have it in a bookstore, for example, that's an old-timey thinking. Bookstores today don't display your book unless you give them a lot of money, typically $50,000 to $100,000. They put your book out for 45 days. And then if it sells more copies, they'll keep it there. If it doesn't, they get rid of you. You're off the shelf. So I tell a lot of people want to write a best-selling book. I'd say, what is a best-selling book? Is it selling a lot of copies? Is that what a best-selling book is? Is it the impact it creates? Is it being used as a business card to create other opportunities for you? You have to decide, why am I doing the book in the first place? If you're really just doing the book because you want to help people to grow, why, you would just give it to everybody, right? That would be part of your stewardship. So if you're doing it to make money out of it, then I would say the chances of making money out of it are remote for most people, unless they're famous speakers. And I mean, famous individuals. A person who was president of the United States can write a book, and lots of people will buy the book because they want to see the ins and outs of some secrets they didn't know before. But someone who's unknown writing a book, one in a million, perhaps really becomes a bestseller. So for me, ego aside, I want the book to help people, right? I want the book that you have in your hand. I don't know if we sent it to your school, but we sent it, I thought, to every president of every university in the country. Obviously, I was trying to be helpful. And someone said, well, you're crazy. Why would you tell them all this stuff? I go, why not? We're creative people who come up with new ideas every day. And furthermore, someone cannot just copy what you do. They understand the what, they don't understand the why, therefore they'll botch it up and it wouldn't work just right. But I wasn't trying to create, I've had offers, so many offers to be a consultant to a lot of these colleges, when they read the book. That wasn't really my goal at all. And so I didn't pursue that pattern. I'm too busy for doing that. And by the way, most colleges will tell you they want to do this and that, and they're committed and they really want to improve things and so on. Don't kid yourself. Most of them think very small, and they're not really as committed as you think. I mean, spiritually they might be committed, but from a business perspective, they're not. They think they can get a consultant and pay him $20,000 and they're going to know how to build a university. Well, someone who knows how to do that, would want a million or two to help do that, right? It's a different world because the principles, as you alluded to earlier, are business principles that can be sold to a corporation for mega bucks, if you will. I have groups that come here, business groups that come here and spend 2, 3 days, and I speak to them. And part of my energy there is because these people will send us their children. These people advocate the school to other people. We built a phenomenal brand through our basketball going to NCAA, through our ads that you may have seen on CNBC and Fox Business, through the promotion that we do, with families. I mean, we've done a heck of a job, I'll tell you, in a very short period of time to get the name Hypo University known to people. And Hypo University is not an inexpensive school. I watched your school cost, of attendance is minimal. Hypo will be multiples of that. Maybe 4 or 5 multiples of that. So we really have to create a segment of the marketplace that can understand who we are and what we do and appreciate it and respond to it.
Well, that was a really thoughtful answer. And what I took away from it was to think about, if you're an aspiring author, think about the strategy behind the use of your book, because it may be much, much broader or different than you originally envisioned.
Yes.
And I'm very conscious of your time. I know you've got a busy schedule today, but I also just wanted to give you the opportunity to speak about your foundation, because I think that's very interesting, and the work that you do. And also in sort of the same breath, a question is, what does it mean to have a successful life? And has your definition of success changed over the years with your experiences, or has it remained constant?
Oh, yeah. The definition of success changes as your goals, aspirations, needs, and fears emerge. Um, if you ask Ted Turner, how does he define success, he would have said it's building a media empire, like CNN. If you ask Hank Aaron, he'll tell you it's beating the record of Babe Ruth. If you ask Albert Einstein, he might say it's unraveling the secrets of the universe. If you ask Mother Teresa, she probably would have said feeding the hungry and clothing the poor in the back alleys of Calcutta. Success is in the eyes of the beholder. Success doesn't come to you, you must go to it. So to go to it, you must know what it is. You must define the it. Otherwise, you get to success and then you realize that you're the biggest failure ever existed, because you say, well, I'm not happy, I'm not joyful, it's not what I thought it was, I have more problems with it, etc. I don't think success is that important. I think significance is much more important. So I like to say success is the 3 F's: fans, fame, fortune. Significance of the 3 F's: your family, your faith, and your friends. And I mean that loosely, but you understand. I think that I don't get up in the morning saying, let's see, how can I be successful today? I get up in the morning saying, how can I be impactful today? Can I really help somebody? I used to speak 150 times a year to corporations and all of that across the world. I never thought of it as speaking to 1,000 people. I said, if one person today could benefit from something I say, that was a successful day. Now, of course, I wanted all 1,000 of them to feel that way, but I'm happy with one, because that one can light the candle for so many others. So I think with maturation, I'm much older than you are, with maturation and incubation of the human presence, one's priorities change. And as one's priorities change, one's definition of success changes. So success for me today is being healthy, being impactful, have good friends, being a good family person, have time for my grandkids. I had to change 2 major meetings today for Friday because I found out my grandson has a basketball game and they're doing a little birthday while they're there. And so I've changed the meetings to go to the, birthday thing. So, values change and priorities change, hopefully for the good, not for the bad, not for the worse. But look, success is better than failure, you understand. But if you'll never succeed unless you fail. So failure, in a sense, is the road to success. As long as it's productive failure, you know why you failed, how to avoid that next time, how to learn from it, then productive failures are good things. Non-productive successes are a waste, because you succeed, you don't know why you succeeded, so you can't replicate it.
And
And
and how has your foundation helped drive that success and significance for you?
when you say foundation, what do you mean?
The Qubein Foundation?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, that's a long story. That came from um, that came from somebody helping me get a scholarship, anonymously when I was sophomore in college. And that caused me to want to start something to help other people. That's probably the most significant work I've done. I've done a lot of pretty cool things in my life, but that's probably the best because it's pretty much anonymous. We don't really promote it, but it's helped a lot of kids from this area go to college. Ironically, we have a meeting this week for the foundation where they interview kids and give scholarships. So yeah, that's been a very meaningful thing as well for. But life is like your life is like a jigsaw puzzle. It has many pieces to it. And you want to have intentional congruence by having the right pieces to complete that puzzle. Otherwise, you have tons of pieces, but they don't complete the puzzle. It's supposed to be a dog, and you end up with half cat and half mouse, and that's not a complete puzzle. So that's what I mean by congruence. One has to have congruence of all the capitals one has: spiritual capital, mental capital, financial, intellectual, societal, familial, economic, whatever it might be. So that's I don't focus on success. I focus on fulfillment, I think, more than success. I mean, of course, I love for my basketball team to succeed and win. Of course, in those kind of parochial parts of life, of course. But for me personally, I try to search for a deeper meaning than that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey and not only the success but the significance that you've had along the way. And what you just said actually makes me think back to something that was once said. I think I actually heard this in church when I was younger. They said, many people spend much of their lives climbing a ladder only to get to the top to realize they chose the wrong ladder to climb.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And that what you just said reminded me exactly of that. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing it. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, no, no. I honor you for your work. I enjoy chatting with you. You ask good questions, and I pray and wish for you greatness in all that you do.
Thank you so much. Well, I deeply appreciate you and your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney, and have a great day.
All right, God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This episode of The Matt Sweeney Show is open sourced under the MIT license. You are free to download, use, copy, modify, merge, publish, distribute, sublicense, sell. Yes, you can use it commercially, so long as you include this notice and link to mattsweeneyshow.com. Thank you to my beautiful wife, Tusculum University, listener kids, and our contributors for making this episode possible. Support freedom and more episodes like this by contributing at mattsweeneyshow.com.